Welcome, my friends, to the Alyosha Society, where we're pursuing truth and beauty and goodness through great literature. Now, if you're watching this video because you're taking the Great Books 3 Early Modern course, then you've been through a lot with me. Yeah, you're probably getting tired of seeing some of this, but you've been through the Pilgrim's Progress, Gulliver's Travels, The Social Contract, Frankenstein. How much fun was that? Northanger Abbey, Notes from Underground, some poetry, and then this is the final book in that course. So if you're watching this video just because you wanted to watch videos on the Screwtape letters, then this is just an isolated video. I'm going to be doing 5 total videos on the Screwtape letters. Got my new shirt. For those of you who know the drill and you've been taking the course, we have a different themed shirt for every book. Does it have anything to do with the book? Not really. I look in my closet and I think, Northanger Abbey. What screams? And then I grab that. This is what spoke to me when I looked for Screwtape. So here we are. Anyway, whatever brings you here, I'm glad you're here. I hope this is a blessing to you. I hope you enjoy this content. Let me go ahead and pull up some things here to give you a little bit of an idea of where we're headed. As is the custom, I tend to begin each of the courses. In fact, I usually include in every video an outline of the videos and what we're doing. We are going to be doing Screwtape. And here you go. 5 videos. This video is going to be all introduction. And you know what I'm talking about: historical biographical approach, the literary toolbox, all the things that you've been learning in this course about how to read a book, how to enjoy a book, how to get the most out of it. So we're going to do all the background material here in this first video. And then I broke it down, as you can see there on the screen. There are 31 total letters in the Screwtape letter. So 1 to 7, 8 to 16, 17 to 24, and then we'll wrap it up. Now, we will not be diving into every detail of every single letter. That's not really the point here. The point is to hit some highlights, show you what C.S. Lewis is doing in this book and how he does it, how it should apply to your life, how it can help you, encourage you, convict you, challenge you, but definitely to hit some of the big ideas. And then, you reread this book. This is another one of those books that you reread. If you're 16 or 18 now, you reread it, when you're 25 and 28 and 36 and 42 and 51 and 67 and 88 and 92. And I expect that you got those exact years down. Don't make me come and find you. So here it is, outline of videos. Let's go ahead and get started. Literary Toolbox, you knew it was coming. We've been doing this all the way through. You should be hearing it and seeing it and smelling it in your sleep. Let me go ahead and just put all of the items up here that I know you're very familiar with, and then talk about the ones we're going to do. So here I have what I call the 4 tools, or the 4 items in the literary toolbox. They're tools that you take them out of the toolbox and you use them properly, and it can help you gain tremendous, I think, ground and better understanding what you're reading. So elements of a plot. We're not going to talk about that one as much. You'll see why a little bit later. It's because of what kind of book this is. This is not really a story. It's not really a novel. I guess there is kind of a plot, but we're going to focus in this video on historical context and biographical context. And later on, we'll be talking about the others, the genre questions. We're going to do that in the next video, literary devices and so forth. So there you have it. We're going to do 2 of the tools in this video. So when was this book written? Why was this book written? Who wrote it? What do I know about that author, or what can I learn about that author that helps me understand the book better? Historical biographical approach, once again. All right, let's move me. You can still see Clive's there. Let's take a look. You may or may not have known that he was born in 1898. Hey, Spanish-American War? I don't think that has a whole lot to do with understanding the book better, but wars do, and we'll get to that. Now, 1908, his mother dies. Now, see, when you look at the timeline of an author, so students, what I'm trying to do in this course is give you tools and spark your imagination and your interest. So when you go off and do this on your own, these little tidbits will kind of come back to you. Now, you may look at this and think, okay, so what? His mother died. Well, everybody's mother dies eventually. But look at when she died. C.S. Lewis is 10 years old when his mother dies. Now, friends, I don't care what your situation is, that's probably going to have an impact in your life. 10 years old, that just makes me sad. I'm blessed. I'm 53 years old and my mother is 86 and she still goes to work. C.S. Lewis lost his mother when he was 10. So when I read one of his books and I see that a character loses a parent, then I take note of that. And I think, he felt that. He knew what that was like. That's meaningful. 1960, so he's 18 years old now. This is really important. I don't know if you've ever heard of George MacDonald, but he was probably the biggest influence on C.S. Lewis in terms of literary influence. Who was George MacDonald? Well, he was a 19th century author. I think he's born in the 1820s, I think, and he may have made it to the 20th century. So he lived a long life, and he wrote, here's what's important. He was one of the, I was doing fantasy when nobody else was, or when fantasy wasn't as cool. Yeah, he was kind of like a pioneer in the realm of fantasy writing. And this is language he uses, he baptized my imagination. Oh, I like that. See, look, guys, there's probably no Narnia, Ransom trilogy, all these great books that have changed our lives and changed the face of literature in the 20th and 21st century probably don't exist if George MacDonald had not had this tremendous influence on his life. Now, they didn't cross over. All right, C.S. Lewis was 7 years old when George MacDonald died. What I mean is his writings, his books. Phantastes is the one he read in 1916. So keep that in mind. When I dig deeply into the life of an author, and I love doing that. It's one of my favorite things to do. Just go down as deep as you can. One of the things I always do is I find out who are the authors that influenced this person. And I've done that, with Jane Austen, with Charles Dickens, with Dostoevsky, with Virginia Woolf, James Joyce. And then I go and read that author and everything just explodes. You just get a deeper understanding of the author's work. So if you want to be a C.S. Lewis scholar, then you need to start reading some George MacDonald. I'd start with Phantastes. So this is also important. 19 years old, he enlisted in the British Army. C.S. Lewis fought and was injured in World War I. Why is that important? Well, that's important no matter what. I mean, being in the military, that's life-changing, fighting in a major war like this. But guys, this is all about warfare. This is all about fighting. This is all about strategy. C.S. Lewis experienced that as a soldier. So when he's writing about battle strategies in here and such, friends, he's pulling from his own experience. He's not just reading books about war and battles and such. No. He was on the battlefield. That's huge. 25 years old. This is what most people think of when they think of C.S. At least I would think so. He was a professor at Oxford University, and then he taught at Cambridge for a number of decades. Yeah, that's exactly right. 1925, he started teaching at Oxford. He was there for 3 decades, taught at Cambridge. I mean, C.S. Lewis has what you would call an illustrious career and an impressive resume. So more on that later. Now, I want to put the 1925 date together with the 1931 date. These are important. When Lewis was teaching at Oxford in the 20s, he was an atheist. He was raised in a Christian home, but he became an atheist. When he became an adult and he starts thinking, look, I got to make these decisions on my own. My belief system, I have to own it. He decided, I'm an atheist. That is someone who does not believe that there is a God. C.S. Lewis ended up becoming friends with some other like-minded folks, not in terms of the atheism, but in terms of literature and medieval history and fantasy and so forth. And you all know who J.R.R. Tolkien is, the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit. So Tolkien was a good friend of C.S. Lewis, and because of Tolkien's influence, C.S. Lewis becomes a Christian. Ooh, now this, my friends, is going to change everything. Because think about it. We don't have this. We don't have the Great Divorce. We don't have Narnia, Ransom Trilogy. We don't have this body of literature that we Christians today in the 21st century cherish and value so highly, if it's not for the fact that Tolkien had such an influence on him, and Lewis becomes a believer 6 years after he started at Oxford. A couple of years later, they started a little book club, sort of like the Alyosha Society. No. It's not like the Alyosha Society. The Alyosha Society is an adult book club, and we come together, we read books, and we talk about them. This is more like authors. This is more like writers. And there were a number of well-known, prestigious names, Tolkien being one of them. So Lewis is now hanging out with people like J.R.R. Tolkien, and they're talking not only medieval history and literature, but theology as well. C.S. Lewis, of course, was a member of the Anglican Church. Lewis became a Christian, but he decided not to join the branch of Christianity, of Christendom, that Tolkien was a part of, the Roman Catholic Church. So yeah, Tolkien was a Roman Catholic and Lewis was Anglican. Now, important alert. This is huge, guys. In this context, World War II breaks out. You know the history. Hitler invades Poland. Hitler invades Czechoslovakia. World War II breaks out. The United States doesn't get into it until after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. But here's what I want to point out to you that's huge. Watch this. Oh, friends, this is big. So not only did C.S. Lewis fight in World War I, he wrote Screwtape right in the middle of World War II. Once again, an environment, a culture of strategy, fighting. But this wasn't just fighting, guys. World War II is not just over, a boundary dispute. The powers that were fighting against Adolf Hitler saw themselves as fighting against the very essence of evil. And this is one of the reasons that we call this generation of men and women who were involved in fighting World War II the greatest generation. Because when you look at stories like Normandy and countless others, the storming of those beaches, the bravery of these young men who basically knew they were going to their deaths. But friends, they were fighting evil. What's going on in the Screwtape letters? Evil is at work. Evil is conniving. Evil is strategizing. It's important. It's all in this context. Just makes a lot more sense that Screwtape happens in this context. Now, a couple of years after that, he wrote probably one of my favorite C.S. Lewis books, Mere Christianity. The Great Divorce. These two books continue to have tremendous, friends, I mean tremendous influence in the world, and continue to be a benefit, a gem, a jewel to the church. 1950, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe comes out. So he starts Narnia after he's already written some of these heavier books. He's 52 years old. So Lewis is basically my age when he writes the first Narnia book, and then he writes it from there. It always makes me depressed to hear things like that. You know, I think, wow, Bruce, you've accomplished nothing. I'm just kidding. But really, I mean, come on. Yeah, so he writes Narnia. A little bit of the sad, friends. 58-year-old C.S. Lewis gets married for the first time to a woman with whom he was deeply in love, Joy Davidson. She dies 4 years later. Broke his heart. Lewis didn't live himself much longer than this. He lived a few years after this. He died in 1963. But he wrote A Grief Observed after his wife died, just talking about what it's like to process deep pain. But friends, listen, he didn't leave his faith. I'm sure he thought about it, but his faith was strengthened as he went through this horrific pain, the death of his wife. So that brings us up to the end of his life, 1963. Oddly enough, it probably didn't get a lot of press that day, because on November the 22nd, 1963, President Kennedy, I know, JFK was assassinated in Texas. Well, that rocked the entire world. Also, just so happens that another famous philosopher, Aldous Huxley, died on that same day. So it's just a crazy day, November the 22nd, 1963. Oh, and I barely missed him. Oh, I was born in 1969, 6 years. I was just a young, budding, negative 6-year-old at the time. Barely remember those days. So there you have it. Now, we're going to be also doing the genre questions. I may have said earlier that we're doing those in the next video, but I think I'm going to go ahead and do them in this video. So a little bonus for you. Remember, keys to understand a book. I've been showing you this slide for months and months now. What kind of book is this? Drum roll. What's our genre? Is it a Bildungsroman? Is it historical romance? Is it poetry? No. It's what's called an epistolary novel. Do you remember the other epistolary novel that we've already done in this course? Yeah, I know you do. Frankenstein. So we've already talked about what an epistolary novel is, but I am going to remind you a little bit. An epistolary novel, and this one is way less complicated than Frankenstein, isn't it? Because remember, with Frankenstein, you have the frame, the outer frame, then you have the frame within a frame within a frame, and we did the Russian dolls and everything. This is very simple. Okay, this is not complicated at all. This is an elder demon named Screwtape who is writing to a younger demon, his nephew, Wormwood. That's it. That's what all 31 of the letters are, just like that. So it's not very complicated. But remember, when we did Frankenstein, and when we've done every book, we said, okay, with that genre, remember, we've done political science, we've done, let me see, we've done allegory, we've done satire, Gulliver's Travels. So we've done parody with Dostoevsky. There are a set of questions that I'm saying to you, these are the general questions that you kind of focus on these when you're reading that genre. Thus, we call them the genre questions. So who is writing to whom? You got to know that. That's going to, because because in some epistolary novels, the letters go back and forth, like Poor Folk by Dostoevsky, for example. But in other epistolary novels, it's like Screwtape, in that one person or entity is writing to another entity, and that's it. It's the same all the way through. So that means in this case, it's always Screwtape. So guys, that means that as much as you can, and as much as it's appropriate, you got to kind of get yourself into the mindset of Screwtape, because he's the person writing everything. So every opinion, every worldview has to be filtered through that reality. Why are they communicating to each other? Is it one way or two way? Well, we already said it's all one way. And he's writing to Wormwood to give him advice. So it's sort of like the idea that, well, if everyone has a guardian angel, then maybe Lewis is not necessarily saying this is the truth. Okay. It's sort of the idea that, well, maybe there's a demon assigned to every person to do whatever they can to bring that person down spiritually and disrupt their lives and get their minds off of good things and beautiful things and true things. And in this case, the older demon is counseling the younger demon. Here's how you do it. Here's how you deceive the patient, as they call him. Here's some things you can get his mind on to get his mind off of the thing. So you have to flip everything upside down when you read Screwtape. If Screwtape says something is good, then that means it's bad, because he's a demon. If he says something's bad, then that means it's good, because he's the very essence, really, of evil. What's the relationship? All right, well, we have uncle, nephew, older, younger, supposedly wiser. It's just like an old guy counseling a younger guy. And so he's giving him advice on how to hurt him. How much time elapses between each correspondence? There is a time lapse here. The patient, the unnamed patient here, we may have to give him a name, like Jeff or Rob. I don't know. We'll talk about that later. But he's not a Christian in the opening of the Screwtape letters. He becomes a Christian. So then everything changes. Screwtape has to change his strategy, because now he's a Christian. Well, now we want to, try to get him away from that as much as we can. Before he became a Christian, the whole idea was, don't let him become a Christian. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Is it secretive? There are some epistolary novels where certain other individuals don't know about the correspondence, and that's important. I don't know that that's really going to come into play here. Obviously, the patient doesn't know about the correspondence, so that's important. Are they truthful? Oh, I like that one. One demon talking to another demon, and we're asking the question if they're sharing truth. That's going to be a fun one to talk about. All right, that is it for video number 1. I know I kind of crammed a lot in here. Rewind, rewatch if you need to, but I feel like we've got at least the key issues with biographical context, historical context, and the genre questions. And we'll review some of that in the next video and get right into the Screwtape letter. So you're going to want to read at least letters 1 through 7 before you check out the next video. See you then, friends.